Algoma Steel says that without that government support, the company would likely have already seen its last days. Joining us to unpack all of what you just heard in the future for the company is the CEO of Algoma Steel, Michael Garcia. Mr. Garcia, pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much for making the time for our program tonight.
You're welcome. Good to be here.
I have to start off with the employees who received those layoff notices on Monday. Was there any way to avoid, the volume of them right now, especially 3 weeks before Christmas, or even just the timing?
Well, certainly this has been a very challenging and sobering week for the company. It's been very serious as we notify our employees about the specific timing of their layoffs. I would say that the entire company has known for a few months now what our strategy would be if these tariffs are not removed. We had to accelerate our pivot to electric arc steel making. That encompasses a shutdown, an accelerated shutdown of our blast furnace and coke ovens. That drives the amount of jobs that we announced yesterday going on layoff. And so we started running down all the raw materials. When we saw and understood when we were at that 16-week timeline of final operation, that's when we were obligated to give the official layoff notice in compliance with legislation and our CBA. So that's really what drove the timing of the announcements on Monday. But certainly our thoughts are with the employees. It's been a sobering week here, but it's not been a helpless week. We have a strategy. We are pivoting to the future of the Canadian market and the future low-cost production steel platform that this company will be operating on going forward.
And I do have a number of questions, Mr. Garcia, about that strategy. Just one more, though, on the people and the families who are affected by this. The minister in that clip we played, and she reiterated in the House of Commons today, says that the government is working with the company on some sort of plan, I guess, or something to do with those employees. Like, what is the plan? Is there anything in the works for these 1,000 people who have been issued the layoff notice, or will they, as of March, be out of a job for sure?
Well, we will not, once we shut down the blast furnace and the coke ovens, those jobs are not coming back. Those operations are not coming back. I think what the minister was referring to is the diversification investments that are, the company is working very closely with the government to examine and pursue. And if we pursue those investments, so if we invest in a structural beam mill here in Algoma Steel, if we invest in expanded plate production here at Algoma Steel, that will drive the creation of more jobs. It won't be a one-for-one replacement of the jobs that used to run the blast furnace. It'll be new jobs that are running a structural beam mill or an expanded plate facility. Those jobs could be as many as 400 to 500 jobs in the years to come.
And as far as the necessity of these layoffs, as you mentioned, like I'm hoping you can describe this in layman's terms, but basically you're moving from one way of doing things to another that requires simply like less employees to do that. Was that the plan? Like, were those 1,000 jobs going to be cut no matter what? And this is now a question of timing, according to your company, because of the Trump tariffs?
Yes. So in the fall of 2021, we announced a major transformation at Algoma Steel. We announced transforming from a steelmaking platform of blast furnace and coke ovens, which had served us very well for many, many decades, to a new modern steelmaking platform of electric arc furnaces, which is more cost-effective, lower cost, more nimble, more flexible, and required less labor intensity. So in the previous version, to make 2 million tons of finished goods with a blast furnace and coke ovens, it took us around 3,000 employees. With the new electric arc furnace employees, we can make 3.2 million tons, so a significant expansion of tons with about 1,600 employees. So that was always the future of this company. We expected that transition to happen in early 2027 or late 2027. But with the dynamics and the significant change to our available markets with the U.S. tariffs, the future has arrived early at Algoma Steel.
Is it fair to say that you had to cut costs essentially because of a depletion of revenues?
We did. On, I think it was May 30th, the 50% tariffs were announced, and they've been in place for 66 months. And we simply could not survive without, number one, the financing that the government, both the provincial and the federal government supply, but without doing an accelerated early transformation to electric arc furnace steelmaking. Actually, a little bit earlier than the EAF furnaces are actually ready to do, but because our demand is so low, we're almost completely locked out of any coil sales because the majority of our coil that we were producing was going to the U.S., and that was our largest product category. So we have so little orders at the current moment that we're able to execute this early transition, build our capabilities up as the Canadian domestic market continues to build and grow based on the important moves that the government of Canada is making, that they announced last week. And so that's our strategy. It's an early pivot, but it's a viable path for the company going forward.
You mentioned the lifeline in the form of those loans, $400 million from the federal government, $100 million from the government of Ontario. I'm sure you're aware the subject of political debate in the House of Commons in the Ontario legislature has very much been, focused on why were there not any conditions attached to that money, to those loans in order to protect Canadian jobs. Did the governments know that these layoffs were in the cards before they agreed to these loans to your company?
Well, I think the government certainly knows our business strategy. It knows the pivot that we had to make. It knew very well that the extreme pressure the company was under. I don't think anybody would loan the company $500 million without asking very detailed questions about what our business plan was. I think the core concern is how do we protect the ongoing Algoma Steel? How do we make sure this company is competitive, is viable? What's the technology you're going to use? How are you going to make steel? And the jobs associated with that are an output of that. If we're making steel with an EAF steelmaking platform, that requires a certain amount of jobs, and we've been very clear about how many jobs that requires. If we're making steel with blast furnace and coke ovens, that's a different number of jobs, but we aren't going to operate that way. So we're shutting those assets down, and that's what's driving the adjustment of employment. I would love to say that I can get more competitive, make more steel, make it cheaper, and make it with more employees so that there's more jobs involved. But that's just not the configuration we're moving towards. And we've been very open with that, both with the government and with our own employees.
When you look toward the future for the company against the backdrop of these tariffs, which appear at this moment in time and for the foreseeable future not to be going anywhere, the government has essentially proposed a number of policy measures, some of which are already in effect, some of which will still come into effect, that is aimed at essentially making your market Canada. In combination with those loans and the retooling that you talked about. When you look at that in the aggregate, do you believe Algoma Steel is viable?
Yes, we are. It's going to take work. We've got to get this transition right. We've got to bring up those electric arc furnaces. We've got to reach the output and the cost structure that we know we can reach with this modern state-of-the-art technology, with the incredible dedicated workforce we have here at Algoma Steel with over 10 decades of steelmaking experience. We have the people to get this right. And I also have faith that the government is taking the right steps to create a fair and competitive market for domestic steelmakers. In the near future, the domestic steelmakers in Canada need to dominate the domestic market for Canadian steel. In just the recent number of years, the foreign steelmakers around the world dominated the domestic market for steel in Canada. They held 66% of the market share in Canada for steel. That's going to change. That is changing now. And the announcements the government made last week are part of that change. Increased, more stringent tariff rate quotas, more stringent Buy Canadian requirements, more acceleration of these national projects going forward, subsidies for transporting steel across this great country that we have, these vast distances. All of that is going to make a market in the near future where Canadian steel companies can thrive, and Algoma will be at the very top of that list of thriving Canadian steel companies.
Do you believe the change, as you describe it, the change in model, is a permanent one? And I ask because I was here covering it when Trump version 1 levied very punitive sectoral tariffs on steel to the tune of 25%. And I've had a number of people who were issued layoff notices, reach out to me saying, like, it feels as though that lesson was forgotten very, very fast by both governments and the company, right? Everyone went right back to depending on the U.S. as its primary customer. Are those days forever done, in your view, Mr. Garcia?
I think so. What's the cliche? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I think we've learned that from a national security standpoint, for the viability of a robust, less volatile national economy, we have to make some choices about how our domestic industries are going to look. I do look forward to the point where we reestablish trade with the U.S. That's an important part of Canada's future prosperity, I believe. It's important. It's an important part of the future prosperity of the Canadian steel industry. But we can never reach a point where our fundamental health as an industry is so dependent on a single foreign market, because access to that single foreign market, even if it's at our doorstep, and it is at our doorstep, it's a couple of hundred meters beyond these windows behind me, we've learned that can be disrupted at any time. So I think going forward, when the U.S. Trade relationship improves and there's more access to the U.S. market, we'll certainly take advantage of that. But we'll never lose sight of the fact that we have to build the foundation of our company on a strong domestic presence.
Can the employees of your company trust that to be the case, given that that has already not been the case, and now they're at a loss of their own jobs because of it?
I believe so. We try to be open and honest with our employees. They know our strategy. They knew our strategy in 2021 when we announced the transition to electric arc steel making. There's been employees that are running every day safely and professionally our blast furnace and coke making operations. And they've been doing that since the fall of 2021, knowing that those jobs are going away. First, it was in 2027. More recently, they know now that they're going away in just a short number of months, and they're still coming in every day. They're still coming in running safe, running that operation with the true professionals that they are, and they deserve our utmost respect for the way they have handled this. We're being open and honest with them. I hope that we are gaining their trust, to your question, because we certainly trust and respect them.
Mr. Garcia, I'll leave it on that note. I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.